Hi, friends, and welcome. I hope you're doing well. Let's do a check-in question here. The check-in question today is going to be something like, um, you know what I do when I'm my favorite resource for this, when I'm trying to come up with a good check-in question, is this 100 brave and interesting questions. I'm trying to find one that's kind of medium level heavy. Ooh, this one's kind of interesting. And I'll share this link in the chat, but this is question number 5. If you were guaranteed the answer to one question, what would it be? I know that's kind of a big one, but let me know in the chat, and I'll also share a link to that thing. If you were guaranteed the answer to one question, what would it be? This is not specifically related to the theme of today, which is like how to provide great feedback, but let me think on this a second. You know what I think it is? I was trying to go steer away from it and pick something else, but I think I would like to know the date and time of my death. I think that would fundamentally change everything. And there's probably a movie in there somewhere. I don't know if that sounds like a log line for a movie. What if you knew exactly when and how you would die? I don't really care about how. I just want to know when, because I want to know how much time I've got left. So that's my answer. I'd love to hear from others. And there's a 15-second delay on these calls, so it might take a minute or so for your answers to appear before me. But yeah, let me know. So let's see. Here we go. I was bringing up my Google Doc with my bullet points so I can tell you exactly what we're doing today. So today is my brief guide to giving great feedback. I'm going to be showing you inside the Choose Your Own Adventure tool, which I'll explain. Some of you will know what that is, and some of you won't know what that is. I'm going to start with a simple way to organize or to really conceptualize the essay writing process. I'm going to do some do's and don'ts for giving feedback on a first draft. I'll share 4 questions that you can ask of any essay draft. There are 4 questions that I ask if a student is not writing about challenges. And there are 4 questions that I ask, different questions, if a student is writing about challenges. I'm going to give a brief guide to how to revise 2 different types of essays. And then I'm going to show how inside the Choose Your Own Adventure tool, you can basically route students to answer their questions, because that's how it was built. Some of you maybe know what it is. Let me know in the chat. I'm just curious. Those of you who here knows what the tool is and is signed up for CEG Live, and who isn't signed up and doesn't know yet. If you don't know what CEG Live is, forgive me for being bad at marketing, but let me give you a quick PSA, quick heads up on what CEG Live is, if you don't know what it is. So College Essay Guy Live, used to be called College Essay Guy for Schools and Organizations, is basically a series of boot camps. And so we've got 3 different kinds of boot camps. One is on how to write the personal statement, one's on the application and supplemental essays, and one's on those darn UC personal insight questions. And we have different dates throughout the summer that we're offering those. This is me in a different colored blue shirt. I'm going to pause that so that it's, and you can see Mario. And the dates for these workshops are right here. So the personal statement is happening in about a month from now. The second personal statement one is happening in 6 weeks. And then we're doing another one in August. And those are 3-day workshops. Students can pick from these 2 times. And then we do brainstorming on day 1. We do outlining and writing on day 2, and then revising and up-leveling. It's like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So by the end of the week, they've got a pretty good sense of what they're working on. And we're excited to have as many students as possible on these. They get access to this tool that you're going to see. I'm going to be talking about it throughout today. And then in August, once those supplemental essays are released, we have basically a similar situation, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They've got 2 times they can choose from. And we talk about activities list, additional info, why us essay, extracurricular essay. And then for those students who are applying to the UCs, we have July 11th, 13th, and 15th. That's when we're doing the boot camp on the UCs. So they'll be coming out of that session with, if they're working hard, a draft of their personal insight questions, but at least topics picked. And they'll have a tool, a separate tool that'll allow them to write those. So that's it. The cost, let me just, so that it's not a big mystery to you. here are the options: $0 or $197 or $497. And you pick, and I'm not going to follow up and find out who picked what. You just pick and you click register and you fill out the information. You share with us a list of students, they get emails. It's nice. So that's CEG Live, and it's happening soon, in a month. Okay, this is the Choose Your Own Adventure tool. And let's see, we've got some folks who are signed up. Yay, some folks are excited about it. And Lainey even loves the tool. Well, thanks for that, Lainey. For those of you who don't know what this is the Choose Your Own Adventure tool. And it pretty much, if you clicked FAQ here, you'd see that it answers pretty much any question a student's going to have about the personal statement writing process. It's, as far as I know, the most comprehensive tool of its kind. I can't officially say that because I haven't seen any other, comprehensive personal statement tools, but it answers all the things. And in this top corner here, where it says counselors, you'll see something called the Guide to Giving Feedback Using the Tool. And that, my friends, will be my curriculum for today. So, how do you offer students feedback? Well, it depends on whether they're wanting feedback on their topic or whether they're wanting feedback on a draft. Now, last time we talked a little bit about how to help students, pick a topic. I talked about how do you help diagnose if a topic is likely to work or not, and I shared a little bit about where to send them inside the tool. Today, we're going to focus on, if you didn't see that one, you can watch the recording. You've got it probably in your email. Today, we're going to talk about how, once a student has a draft, so now we're talking about, it's August or it's October, and they're sharing with you a draft, how do you give them feedback? So if you click this button, Time Saver, here's how I conceptualize the writing process. So imagine that content is sort of like top of the funnel, and then structure, and then details. You could argue that this is an upside down triangle, and yes, it is, but you could also flip this, that we got to talk about content first. Then we talk about structure, then we talk about details. The reason I put this at the top is this is the thing that I want to advise folks to think about first. And why do I say this? Because I think sometimes, and by the way, Ashley, I got this little tiny little box of me in the bottom right corner. Will you make the box, can we make the box twice as large? That'll happen in a few seconds. Thanks, Ashley. Shout out to Ashley for being the best moderator ever. You can tell I'm excited today. So I think the mistake that a lot of folks make is they go into the details early on, right? And it's tempting because you read a draft and you get into it and you're like, this is subject-verb agreement is wacky, or this is spelled incorrectly. But I think that's problematic because I think if we get into the details too early on, thanks, Ashley. If we get into the details too early on, then what we're doing is we are sending a message to students that the content and the structure have changed or are good. In other words, if I look at your essay and I'm saying, oh, you need to change this word, I think what I'm saying is like the rest of it's good, but if you just change this word, maybe it's okay. And if you're not literally saying that, I think that is a message that you're potentially pulsing. So let's talk content first. Let's talk about the what. Then let's talk structure, the how. And then let's leave the details for later, because it could be, even if we do change the wording of that one little thing, if we're changing the content, we're changing the structure, a lot of those details are going to change anyway. So content first. Let's talk, is the what? Is this the clay that we want to be sculpting with, as I sometimes say? If a student's writing what I call a narrative essay, which is a challenges-based essay. So when I say narrative, I mean an essay that's based on a challenge that the student worked to overcome and lessons that they learned. A question that I'm asking is, if it's trying to figure out the topic, are the challenges clear and compelling? Okay. If it's a montage and I'm thinking about the topic, I'm wondering, is the topic elastic or stretchy enough to talk about lots of different sides of the student? And is it going to, be an opportunity for them to talk about skills, qualities, and values that they're going to bring to the college campus? But basically, I'm wondering on the topic level, am I learning a lot about the student? So we can just start there. Even like as you're reading an essay, we can just go, okay, let's just look at the level of content in terms of the topic. First of all, is the topic clear? And then, again, if it's challenges, are the challenges compelling? Do I care? If it's a montage, which is to say an essay that's using some kind of thematic thread, like juggling or basketball or my Eagle Scout project, is it allowing me to see lots of different sides of the student? Because if not, don't get into the structure and details. Let's talk about other potential topics, right? And I know that that's like maybe obvious, but I think it's maybe not obvious. Okay, so my tips on the first draft, don't touch the grammar. Don't proofread either, because again, I think it's sending the wrong message to students. Remind students, if they're working inside this tool, that they can complete all their work inside the essay workbook. So when you click this link here, that's going to take you to the workbook that basically students can do all their stuff in. And they've been told to do this if they've gone through the CEG Live. But this is going to have all of their brainstorming stuff. It's going to have all their outlines, etc. Okay. So I just wanted to ping that for a second. Okay. But then how do we diagnose? So by diagnose, I mean, what questions are we asking about a draft? Okay. So if we're talking about, let's first talk about a narrative essay, which is to say a challenges-based essay. Here are 4 questions that you can ask about really almost any student draft that is about challenges. Okay, question 1, is it clear what the challenges are? Sometimes we read a draft and we're like, the student's talking about this thing that happened to them that really impacted them, but I don't really get a sense or enough of a sense of what the thing was. It was an injury, it was a sickness, it was a thing, kind of an abstract thing that happened to them. We need to be clear on the challenges if it's a challenges-based essay. We don't need all the details, but we need to know what the thing was that happened. Next, is it clear what the effects of the challenges were on the student? Sometimes the student are super challenges heavy. They give a long explanation of the injury or illness, but then they don't give a super clear explanation of what the impacts were. Or sometimes the challenges were on someone else experienced the challenge. My father was sick. This thing happened to my grandfather, whoever it is. But really what we need to know is what were the impacts on you? Second question. Third question, do I learn what you did to overcome the challenges? Oftentimes these essays are so heavy on the challenges and effects, 2/3, 3/4 on the challenge, often on a first draft. Can you squish that up, make a little more room for what I did? And then fourth, is it clear what I learned through the experiences? I know these are, for some of you, this is so obvious, but if you just give these 4 questions to students, it gives them a rubric for evaluating on their own their essays. Inside the tool, when I ask students to ask for feedback from you or from, whoever they're working with on their essays, I ask them to ask these questions. And the reason I do that is that I want them to first ask themselves these questions, because it could be that they just ask these and go, I see there's room for improvement. So that's for challenges-based essays. If the student is not writing about challenges, if they're writing what I call a montage, they can ask, is it clear what my topic or thematic thread is? I mean, have you ever read a personal statement and you're like, I'm not sure what this essay is about? That's a good place to start, right? There's a moment sometimes in an essay where I'm like, I'm having trouble giving feedback. And when I go back to this question, I realize, I don't even know what the theme is, what the topic is. And I have a tool for helping students to figure out what it is, which I'll share in a few minutes. It's called Loglines. If I forget, you can say, hey, Ethan, you said you were going to talk about loglines. Actually, let me do this. Loglines, that'll remind me. Examples of loglines here, there. All right, I'll talk about that in a minute. When it comes to figuring out what is the topic or thematic thread, it doesn't have to be complex. It could be one word. It could be, my topic is animals. Stretch it out a little bit. My topic is how animals have impacted my life, or how animals have led me to want to be interested in, veterinary medicine, or more interestingly, how animals have led me toward an interest in studying psychology or studying, business. And that is enough. And I'll talk more about how to create that sort of log line for an essay, which is like a short description of the essay. So do we have a clear sense of what the essay is? The topic is. Next, are there specific examples in each paragraph that clearly link back to the topic? You've probably read these swimmy essays. That's what I call them. Essays that are kind of a little all over the place. And they're sort of, yeah, I see that you want to talk about this quality of your flexibility, but it's kind of, I don't really have any specific examples yet. And so one simple thing you can do is say, can you theme each paragraph based on a different example of your flexibility, if that's the main theme? So maybe the theme of the essay is, I am flexible in a variety of scenarios. Great. That's your thesis. That's your log line. Give me one example of how you are flexible in different scenarios in each paragraph. Third, are you giving clear values in your examples? By values, I'm talking about a little bit of the so what moments. And I just literally Google values exercise, college essay guy, and I see, lo and behold, there's this values list. Of course, I've Googled it before, but you can Google values exercise college essay guy and ask students, okay, based on the example that you gave me in your second paragraph, so you gave me this example of your flexibility. Well, that is a value. And you're talking about this, gold award and how you had to develop flexibility. Well, since you've already established flexibility as a common thread, could you give me another value that the gold award helped you develop? Well, maybe I learned something about communication or the importance of humor when communicating. And, that was what I learned about being a leader, that being a leader who leads with laughter can be really effective. So now we start to get more values about what kind of leader are you? I'm a leader who communicates through humor. So this values exercise can really help students bring more, I call it nutritional value to the essay. And then, and this is related, is the student answering so what when it comes to their experiences and values? I did that a little bit just now. So what kind of leader are you? Well, I'm a leader who likes to lead with humor. And then so what that? So what does that lead to? Well, what I found is that oftentimes that freed my team up to feel more vulnerable, feel more safe, and we were able to take greater risks together. There we go. So if you keep so whatting, and as a result, we were able to work more efficiently, right? So you kind of keep going, so what, so what, so what? So just to go back for a second. So what did you learn from the, working on the Gold Award? Well, I learned that communication is important. In particular, communicating with humor is important. So what? Because that leads to more safety, more vulnerability, which leads to greater risk-taking, which in some cases leads to greater efficiency. Yeah? So that so what game is what I call it with this values exercise can lead to essays that sparkle. Positively sparkle. You can quote me on that. Okay. So let me pause for a second. And I want to hold the screen on these 4 questions for narrative and these 4 for montage. Feel free to, here, I'll move the cursor. You can screenshot this if you want. These to me are pretty good ones to ask for getting students to think about what the heck are they, what's going on? How is this essay working or not working? If there are questions, let me know in the chat. Okay. Now, where do you send students in the tool? And because sure, it could be great to, if you're working with students on their essays, you can just ask them, like level 1, you can just ask them these questions and be like, hey, and then you can just say, hey, here are some good questions, ask these. Level 2 would be like, here are some good questions to ask, and here's what I think based on your essay. So if you look inside, let me show you this really quick. In the workbook, back to counselor resources here. If you go inside the workbook, you'll see that there's a little feedback thing, so when a student is emailing you and asking for your feedback, I've asked them to copy and paste this simple chart. Is it clear what my challenges are, what the effects of them were, what I did to overcome my challenges? And you can, if you want, just write inside those boxes. You can just respond directly to these 4 questions. Okay. If they remember to do that. If they don't, you can just take this and copy and paste and be like, here are some things to think about. You can just copy and paste these questions and respond. But of course, the next step would be, well, if it's not clear, for example, what the challenges are, how does the student clarify those? If it's not clear what the effects of the challenges on them were, well, how do they clarify those effects? And that, my friends, is what this tool is for. So check this out. Go back to counselors. We're talking about a guide to giving feedback using the tool. Where to send them in the tool. So if the challenges and the effects aren't clear, you can send them here. Let me just show you what some of these links are. Inside the revising section of the tool, and so just note, there's a revising section for the narrative challenges based, and there's a revising section for the montage. Inside this, you'll see basically where to send them to clarify these things. So if the challenges and effects aren't clear, part 1, which is this page right here, helps students to answer, are my challenges clear? So here's an example of a clear challenge. Here's why it's important to clarify your challenges. So you don't have to explain that. And then here's a little walkthrough of how to make your challenge more clear. The next question that students are sometimes faced with is, are the effects of my challenge clear? And here's an example from an essay of a student who wrote, and the effects were super clear. You know, because of this challenge, our home didn't have structure. Schoolwork went unchecked. These are all good examples, clear examples of effects, and they're really short. And they can read the rest of the essay if they want to hear. Why is it important to even clarify those effects? Because we want to understand, we want to draw us into the story, and we want you to set yourself. I'm speaking to students now. We want students to set themselves apart from other students who might have experienced a similar challenge. So here are a bunch of different questions that students can answer to clarify, for example, the effects of their challenges. And then, scrolling down, how do I revise the what I did about it part of my essay? Well, if it's not clear what you did about it, here are 11 ideas for improving the what I did part of the story. Did you take responsibility for anything you hadn't before? And I give examples here, just short ones, but enough to get a student cooking, right? So what I'm suggesting, if it sounds like I'm suggesting this, is like, yes, if a student's what they did about it is not clear, you just go up here, copy the link, paste it into their doc and say, go here. Here are a bunch of ideas, a bunch of questions that you could ask in order to improve this part of your essay, because I feel like your essay could use some help in terms of the what I did about it section. It should take about 5 minutes to read the essay, and you get faster as you do this, but a couple minutes to go, okay, what does the student need help with? Is it if it's a challenges-based essay, is it the challenges and effects, the what I did about it, or it could be that all 3 parts, or 4 parts, I should say, need help. If so, you just say, start at the revising your essay section, just click here, link them to this and say, walk through these 4 modules, answer the questions, and that's probably going to give them some new content. For the what I learned section, we talk about insight. What is insight? How do we spot it? There's a little mini lesson on it. And then here are 10 ways to add insight to your personal statement. For example, think of the opposite. In other words, think about what someone else would say in this situation and then go, what would someone maybe not think to say? What's the opposite of that? That's one example. So I go through a bunch of different ways to add insight to the personal statement. And that's on the challenges narrative side. If a student's trying to revise a montage essay, often they need to either clarify or change their topic. And that's when I'll get into loglines here in a second. So how do you clarify what your topic is? Let me talk about loglines. A logline is a 1 to 3 sentence description of your personal statement. For example, the stickers on my laptop, that's the topic, are like a passport that shows where I've been in my life. And then it names some values. They represent my creativity, open-mindedness, family, commitment to social justice, and love for entrepreneurship. I mean, you can kind of see that scopes an essay out. I know where that essay is going. That's a non-challenges-based essay. If it's a challenges-based essay, you name the challenge, what I did, and what I learned. Growing up, I experienced challenges related to domestic abuse, alcoholism, and being undocumented. Challenges. What were the effects? This led to financial difficulties and increased family responsibilities. What did you do about it? I became my own teacher, supported my family financially, and took on leadership roles. What did you learn? I learned that I value autonomy, doing things not because I must, but because I choose to. That's a really well-written logline, and oftentimes these won't come at the very beginning of the essay process. It's like later on when they're finally getting a sense of what the essay is about. I don't suggest that the loglines are in the personal statement. It's just the organizing principle. It's the thing that if I was trying to pitch a movie to you, I would be like, so my movie's going to be about, and I would read my logline, and then you'd go, okay, I get a sense of what it is. Okay. I'll share this link so that you have it. It'll be in the chat. Here we go. Okay. How do I write a logline for a personal statement? Oh, it's really simple. For montages, it's what is your topic or theme, and then what are the values you'll show in the essay, right? So the topic or theme here, stickers on my laptop, and here are the values I'm going to show. Yeah. For narrative, challenges and effects, what I did about it, what I learned. Yeah. And this is the example here. At the bottom here, you'll see a whole bunch of awesome examples of loglines from narrative and montage essays. And there's a little reminder of what these are. This is one of my favorite tools. It's something that we didn't put together until like last year, actually. I'm closing some of these tabs because it gives me an inner sense of peace. Okay. We were just chatting on Slack in our team. How many tabs do you have open right now? Right now I have open, I'd love to hear in the chat, how many tabs do you have open? I'm going to close the Brave and Interesting Questions one. I only have 6 tabs open right now, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. Okay, back to montage. How do you help a student figure out, for example, you don't need to go through all this with them. You can just, if their topic is unclear, just send them to this link, copy and paste this and be like, here, read through this. Here are some ways to clarify your topic. Try naming it in the first sentence. Try using transition sentences. Try going through your essay draft and bold each time your theme or topic is mentioned. Here's an example. Try highlighting the first sentence of each paragraph and then read them aloud to yourself. These are all ways of helping students clarify their topic. And then I'm not going to go through it right now because I don't want to melt your brain, but there's a whole thing on how to up-level paragraphs. Some students will ask for things like, how do you start an essay? What are some good tips? Here are 7 ideas for how to start an essay. How do you write great transitions? We've got a whole thing on that. This one mirrors, there's another one on writing great transitions that's inside the narrative path as well. It's right here. Okay. Pausing for questions. Lainey's got 5 tabs for Chrome, but there's Outlook, Adobe, and Excel. That's pretty good. Good. I don't know what good means. Graciela's asking, do you have to purchase a CYOA tool? So for school counselors, you just sign up for CEG Live and you get access. If you're an independent counselor, then we are getting ready to put the word out on how you get access to the tool. It's probably going to be related to this counselor community that we're starting. Details coming soon. Stay on the email list. But I'll let you know soon. Yeah. Other questions? What do we got? Because that's the gist. That's the main content that I wanted to share with y'all today. And so I am your, let's see, did I cover all the things? Conceptualize the writing process. Do's and don'ts for giving feedback. Yep. Don't talk about grammar. Don't talk about proofreading. Do think about content. I covered the 4 questions to ask of any essay draft. I did do a brief guide to revising montage and narrative. And then the answer to how to help a student solve pretty much any question they have is to just point them to wherever they need to go in the tool. Yep. Ooh, there are questions in the Q&A. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. For students working on their essays over the summer, do you just have them focus on the general personal statement since we won't know for sure what the supplemental questions are? Good question, Juliana. I like this one. So I think personal statement, focusing on that early is great because I think that there's my wife in the background. She's very tiny. I'm not going to squish her. Okay. So I think starting with personal statement is a great way to go because it's like the personal statement. It's the thing that they're thinking about, the thing they've been told to think about. And if they can kind of figure out their personal statement, then they can write their other essays with that in mind because they know, okay, I'm writing my personal statement about whatever it is, my experiences in debate. And so now I'm not going to write about debate in my YS essay or my other essays. But there are many schools whose essays kind of stay the same from year to year, right? Like we know that probably Cornell is going to have a long YS essay. So I'm okay. And I'll tell students when they do CEG Live or courses, I'll be like, oh, we'll have this little moment where I'll be like, here's some schools that, if you're like, let me know what schools you're applying to. And the students will tell me, and I'll be like, you can probably, those are probably, and I say, don't count on this, but those are probably going to be the same. And so if you've done this a few years and you know certain schools, let's zoom back. Students who are applying to selective schools will probably be writing a YS essay. So if your students are applying to private selective schools, I think it's a safe bet to have them start researching and writing a YS. I would rather them start that than wait until just before they're getting ready to go back to school and then start writing their essays. So I think it's safe to start working on a YS. I also think it's safe to start writing what I call a super essay. And a super essay is a supplemental essay that's going to be reused for lots of different prompts. It's something that I talk about on the application and supplements bootcamp. So it could be that, for example, a student really wants to talk about Boy Scouts and the angle on Boy Scouts is that he leads historical trail hikes. And what he realizes through some brainstorming is that this historical trail hiking thing that he does with Boy Scouts is actually going to work for a whole bunch of different prompts. So it's going to work for his Michigan essay that asks about a community that he's a part of. For his Duke essay, it's going to work for his, what's a perspective that you bring. And so that super essay, I think, is a safe one because no matter what schools they end up applying to or what those essays end up being, probably can be tweaked. So what I have students do is I'll have them write the longest version of that. So write the 500-word version that you're going to write for Harvey Mudd. And then you can kind of shorten it for other schools. And sometimes those essays get better, don't they, when they get shorter? So I think it's safe to encourage students to think about a super essay and a YS essay. Are there others that, again, sort of based on specific knowledge from year to year that don't tend to change? Yeah. Could the student potentially write those and then, waste time? Potentially. So you got to it's kind of like on a student by student basis. Like what I'll say to students is like, if you're the kind of person who's like, I just want to get as much done as I can, then start early because a lot of the essays won't change. Okay. So I think it's okay to start. If you're the kind of person that feels like that would just be a huge waste of time if they change the prompts, then don't do that. So I'll sometimes just, kind of leave it up to them. But I will nudge them toward getting started earlier because I think that work that they do is oftentimes going to be valuable down the line. Like even if they do have to, for example, X school didn't have the YS essay, but Y school did. A lot of times they can reuse that content. So I'm a fan of having them start early, but it kind of depends on the student. I think it's good to give them options. Sharon's asking, we should be answering those questions in the feedback box or we should have the student ask themselves that? And here's my shrug emoji. Depends on what students you're working with, Sharon. So I don't mean to be, like snarky, but if your students will answer those questions, I would love it. I mean, I would love to have my students answer those questions. If you feel like your students won't answer those questions and you're like, I just need to answer them, then do that. I think an even better way to be like, I want you to, send me these questions. You answer them first, and then I'll tell you if I agree with you or not. But what will sometimes happen, I think, is students will answer the questions and then they'll be like, oh, now I've got some revising to do. And so what I would maybe say to a student is like, before you send me your draft, if you ask yourself those questions and you answer those and you want to revise before you send it to me, that seems like a great thing to do. Sometimes one of the things we've done in the past is have done like a little self-assessment tool where students will do something like this and they'll say, here's what I think I need to work on. And then it puts us in the position of like, just agreeing with them or disagreeing with them, which I think saves us time. So I think either of those can work, just depending on what your students have capacity for, what they'll do, and what you prepare them for, how you set expectations. So either of those can work. Juliana's yes, I usually have students research the YS at least. But yeah, totally. Also rough out ideas for an extracurricular essay. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to like the super essay, community essay, yep, and a major. Those are all great ones to add. So we are totally in sync on the same page. What are the signs, asks Christine, that a student has taken an essay as far as they're able to and that further revision isn't going to be fruitful? There's like a look in the eyes. I mean, so some of the signs, and this is, I think I'm going to be preaching to the choir here, Christine, but it's if you've given the same note 3 times and nothing's happening, then maybe it's time to move on. It's like any feedback that you give to like a significant other and they're just not changing it. You just kind of go, you know what? Maybe I can find another battle to fight. So I would say, because I think with 2, sometimes a student needs to hear it a second time to edit it. But if I've given it 3 times and they're not changing it, that to me, I'm moving on. What are the other signs? Let me think about this a second. Oh, my neck is tight. It just cracked. Okay. I think it's a timing thing too. I think it's depends on when we are and how much work the student has left. So one thing that I love to encourage is an essay tracker, which is like a spreadsheet with all of the essays that the student needs to write. And we do a check-in on, for example, where are you in terms of the early action, early decision schools? And if a student hasn't started on any of the supplements and it's like October, it's like, okay, we need to shift over. So I would encourage, and you probably do this, but like a Zoom back conversation to see where they are on all of their essays. And this is something that at CEG we do a lot with students, is like making sure that there's that the student is doing, we give them some tools for project managing themselves. And zooming back to go, Are you looking at all of the work that you need to do and not just narrowly focused on this one essay? Let's see. Ba-dum-bum-bum. Okay. Graciela, general observation. I've begun working with students the past few weeks. Everything goes super well, doing the different exercises. They love them. They loosen up, stop trying to answer academically. But then they all hit a roadblock when it comes to distilling an actual topic, how to make the connections. I'm still a work in progress, helping to do that without leading them. Welcome, Graciela. I think I know who you are. Welcome to our, I mean, this is the world every year of, college essay coaching. One of the things that I've found helpful is thinking about the 7 types of montage. So one of the things that I'll introduce students to, I'll just flash up the tool again, is here are these. So, okay, let me just offer a framework that we're going to talk more about on a future course. We talked a lot about this at our CEG retreat this past weekend. But sometimes the student needs to be in gardener mode, where they're, planting ideas, watering the soil. Hey, what's growing? What's happening? And sometimes architect mode, where we're making plans. The gardener mode is very adventurous, unknown, exploration, sort of young. The architect mode is a little bit more, ordered, a little bit more planful. I'm using that word liberally, a little bit more adult, like, okay, let's get this thing done. And one of the tools that I love for helping students do that architecting is, if you look on the left side of the screen here, you'll see these different essay types. So you've got, for example, the I love, I know essay. So that's an essay that a student is writing about something that they love or know a lot about. The next one is the essence objects, or stuff in my room essay. The third one is the skill or superpower. What's a thing that you're great at? And I think, Graciela, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were on the personal statement course, so I might be preaching to the choir here. You might know what I'm talking about. And I've talked about these on other webinars. But I think introducing them to these different types of essays can give them different structures, can plant in their minds different potential maps, because any one of these could lead to a potential essay. And inside the tool, for whatever it's worth, I map out for each one of these how to write the essay. So here are different types of this essay. Here's an example of it. And then in the second module here, it's all about how to write this essay. Here are 4 to 7 different examples. It's basically like how to create the outline, how to write a simple opening, and then, how to brainstorm and write this essay. So this maps out in a really clear, specific way how to basically get them to the next part. Yes, you know this. So what I would say is just introduce them to the 7 types and go, do any of these types work for you? It doesn't have to be one of these types, but these are pretty broad. Yeah? Okay, you're laughing. Okay, cool. But I would say introduce them to these types and say, do any of these feel like they could work for you? So, yeah. Ooh, Lainey, you added tabs to the essay tracker? Will you share that, please? I'd love to see it. Lainey says, we love the essay tracker over here. We added a few tabs so they can also track application requirements across schools, as well as reverse engineering a timeline by working backwards from their deadlines. Will you share that, Lainey? I'd love to see it. And also just email me at my email. I'll put it in the chat. I'd love to see it. And if you're willing to share it with other folks, will you just let me know and I'll give you credit for it? Because I'd love to know. What else? Let's go back to the Q&A. Ba-dum-bum-bum. Okay. Marlene. Hi, Marlene. It's good to see you. I mentor high-achieving low-income students, most applying to Crestbridge. Yay. I feel like narrative essays work better for this type of student. Do you agree? I don't want to box them in. I mean, here's what I'll say is, like, many low-income students have faced challenges. And so I think for many of those students, that will be an option. But I don't want to, and here's why. So Marlene, I almost always now introduce montage first, because what I sometimes find is true is when I'm working with a population of high-achieving low-income students, and how will I know this? From their counselor. Sometimes they'll say, this is a group of high-achieving low-income students. And they'll say to me, they faced a bunch of challenges. If I lead with narrative, then many students just zoom to narrative and they're like, this is my story, my challenges. But sometimes what gets missed is some of these other sides of them. So what do I mean by other sides of them? Well, things like, skills and superpowers that they have. Yes, sometimes that comes through in their essay when they're writing about how they overcame their challenges. But I want to introduce students to all of these options because I want to brainstorm those things while they're still fresh and they have anything is possible for their essay. Now, then I introduce narrative, and some students will be like, okay, I'm going to focus on this. But what often happens is students go, you know what? I was writing about music, and because it's such a big part of my life. And then I was thinking about this career that I want to do, like be a lawyer. That's really cool. And then, yeah, I brainstormed this challenges story. So I could write about music, or I could write about being a lawyer, or I could write about this challenges story. Okay, so they've got some different options. And then, of course, what will happen for some students, sometimes with the help of a caring counselor like you, is we go, is there an essay here that could be combining your love of music and how your challenges led you to want to become a lawyer? Because that could be a really cool story. But I find that students will be, if we go narrative challenges first, they're often drawn to that, because I think we have a cultural push towards, there's an expectation, write about your challenges. That's what's going to get you in. And it's just not true. And I think there's, and we've heard this term from folks other than me, but sometimes there's this tendency to like sort of pick through our trauma and want to like, pillage it for all it's worth. And I think that by going montage first, we give students more options. We give students more creative liberty. And, I don't want students to feel like they're defining themselves by their challenges if they don't want to be defined by those challenges. If they want to be defined by the challenge, what they did and what they learned, great. But I want to introduce them to other options first. Sermon over. Thanks, Lainey, for sharing that. And this comes, Marlene, from like leading workshops where I did narrative first and then montage, and like 80% of students pick narrative. And then I did montage first and narrative, and then like, I don't know, some more percentage of students pick montage. So it engendered more variety in like a workshop setting. Other questions? We got a few minutes here. Some of you might be joining for the next session, which is happening in like 45 minutes, where the amazing Hannah Lim, finally, Hannah, I said your last name correct. I usually say Hannah's, her name before she was married, and David Shaw. And we're going to talk about how do you lead students through a big workshop. And it's basically a condensed version of our WACAC session. So we did a 3-hour session, and we're going to deliver all the content in 75 minutes. And the part that I'm going to be doing is going to be similar to it's going to be a variation on what I just delivered here. So feel free to log off from my portion. I don't see any more questions coming through, so I'm going to hold for another minute. But if there aren't any more questions, that's fine, all good. We can go do our lives, and then it'll be like a shorter recording for folks who watch this in the future. There's Hannah. Hi, you're here. I saw you were here because you jumped on the Google Doc. Okay, let's wrap there then for today. This was a zippy, you can tell my energy is like, pew, pew, pew. I didn't even have caffeine today. But I hope this was useful. And if you've got questions, I was going to say email me, but that's not what I want you to do. I want you to go into the tool, and I want you to go to FAQ, which is in the top right corner here. Click FAQ, and chances are it's answered somewhere in here. So if you've got questions, that's where I refer you to. And of course, if you've got other questions, you can email us, help@collegeessayguy.com. Ashley's like, but we're here for you. All right. Much love. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you soon. Bye.